Took a second chance, trusted you again. I feel shattered. Broken strings, cause you play me like a violin. Shame on me for all your 7 deadly sins. Had it all, but you craved attention. Drowning in your own reflection. Put me down just to see me get back up again. 6 feet under and you're ready to give all the pain. If I was your new addition, you make me part of your equation. Shattered from the past, wish you were my last. Shattered me to pieces like broken glass. Frozen looking at pictures that we took back in the summer. I thought that I would remember how we used to feel, but this isn't real. Now we're over. Take it all, there's nothing left here anyway. We used to talk, but now we don't know what to say. Now we're just 2 passing strangers. We tried, you lied, goodbye forever. Put me down just to see me get back up again. 6 feet under and you're ready to give all the pain. If I was your new addition, you make me part of your equation. Shattered from the past, wish you were my last. Shattered me to pieces like broken glass. The feeling I once knew when I was close to you, they're fading from my heart. Now that we're apart, the memories are still strong. Though you've been gone so long, a broken setback, but I miss you forever.
That is weird that you could hear the typing, because I thought that not having the microphone even in the source would mean no microphone audio. That is weird. Also, I've got a microphone muted, and yet audio seems to still be coming through. Can you hear me? Okay, somehow I have multiple microphone audios, so that's great. So can you hear me okay, or do I need to move the microphone closer? Okay, I will move the microphone closer, and I will turn the rain down. Okay, is that better? I'm gonna have to go through my scenes and figure out how I've got multiple microphones on my stream deck. But that is not why we are here. So I had a job interview. It ended, it was 11 to 11:15, and it was underwhelming at best. But at least it was something. Did you just send a donation through coffee? I think I just got an alert, but it was too fast. I couldn't see it. So thank you if you did. Oh no, I've got the chat under it. That's what happened. I'm a dumbass. That's what happened. So they said they'll make a decision by the end of today or tomorrow. What are you doing? There's no command for it. Are you being a dork? I will add a command, okay? I will add a command after the stream for the coffee. There is some commands you can play with here. Oh shit! I don't have I don't have chatbot. I forgot to turn chatbot on. I know. I thought it was automatic. See, these are the things I have to figure out so I can be. Where even is CloudBot? There we go. Okay. Why would it default to turning off? Come on. Okay, CloudBot is on now. Wait, what? All right. So yeah, I still have to work on that stuff. Some of the other commands must have been in the old Streamlabs bot before they put CloudBot and everything. Okay. Anyway, we are here for reading. We are reading now. If I can pick up the book. Gah. Alright. Get rid of the keyboard. Okay, on to reading, because I just want to finish that chapter that I stopped in the middle of before. I don't like being in the middle of a chapter. Alrighty, here we go. Eomer and Aragorn stood together on the deeping wall. They heard the roar of voices and the thudding of the rams, and then in a sudden flash of light they beheld the peril of the gates. "Come," said Aragorn, "this is the hour when we draw swords together." Running like fire, they sped along the wall and up the steps, and passed into the outer court upon the rock. As they ran, they gathered a handful of stout swordsmen. There was a small postern door that opened in an angle of the burg wall on the west, where the cliff stretched out to meet it. On that side, a narrow path ran round towards the great gate, between the wall and the sheer brink of the rock. Together, Yomer and Aragorn sprang through the door, their men close behind. The two swords flashed from the sheath as one. "Guthwin," cried Yomer. "Guthwin for the mark." "Anduril," cried Aragorn. "Anduril for the Dunedain." Charging from the side, they hurled themselves upon the wild men. Anduril rose and fell, gleaming with white fire. A shout went up from wall and tower. "Anduril! Anduril goes to war. The blade that was broken shines again." Dismayed, the rammers let fall the trees and turned to fight, but the wall of their shields was broken as by a lightning stroke, and they were swept away, hewn down, or cast over the rock into the stony stream below. The orc archers shot wildly and then fled. For a moment, Yomer and Aragorn halted before the gates. The thunder was rumbling in the distance now. The lightning flickered still, far off among the mountains in the south. A keen wind was blowing from the north again. The clouds were torn and drifting, and stars peeped out. And above the hills of the Coombe side, the westering moon rode, glimmering yellow in the storm rack. "We did not come too soon," said Aragorn, looking at the gates. Their great hinges and iron bars were wretched and bent. Many of their timbers were cracked. "Yet we cannot stay here beyond the walls to defend them," said Yomer. "Look," he pointed to the causeway. Already a great press of orcs and men were gathering again beyond the stream. Arrows whined and skipped on the stones about them. "Come, we must get back and see what we can do to pile stones and beam across the gates within. Come now." They turned and ran. At that moment some dozen orcs that had lain motionless among the slain leapt to their feet, and came silently and motionless among the slain, and came silently and swiftly behind. Two flung themselves to the ground at Yomer's heels, tripped him, and in a moment they were on top of him. But a small dark figure that none had observed sprang out of the shadows and gave a hoarse shout. "Barak Kazad! Kazad Amenu!" An axe swung and swept back. 2 orcs fell headless. The rest fled. Yomer struggled to his feet, even as Aragorn ran back to his aid. The postern was closed again. The iron door was barred and piled inside with stones. When all were safe within, Yomer turned. "I thank you, Gimli, son of Gloin," he said. "I did not know that you were with us in the sortie, but oft the unbidden guest proves the best company. How came you there?" "I followed him to shake off sleep," said Gimli, "but I looked on the hillmen, and they seemed overlarge for me, so I sat beside a stone to see your swordplay." "I shall not find it easy to repay you," said Yomer. "There may be a chance ere the night is over," laughed the dwarf, "but I am content. Till now I have hewn naught but wood since I left Moria." "Two," said Gimli, patting his axe. He had returned to his place on the wall. "Two," said Legolas. "I have done better, though now I must grope for spent arrows. All mine are gone. Yet I make my tale 20 at the least. But that is only a few leaves in a forest." The sky now was quickly clearing, and the sinking moon was shining brightly. But the light brought little hope to the riders of the mark. The enemy before them seemed to have grown rather than diminished, and still more were pressing up from the valley through the breach. The sortie upon the rock gained only a brief respite. The assault on the gates was redoubled. Against the deeping wall the hosts of Isengard roared like a sea. Orcs and hillmen swarmed about its feet from end to end. Ropes with grappling hooks were hurled over the parapet faster than men could cut them or fling them back. Hundreds of long ladders were lifted up. Many were cast down in ruin, but many more replaced them. And orcs sprang up like apes in the dark forests of the south. Before the wall's foot, the dead and broken were piled like shingle in a storm. Even higher rose the hideous mounds, and still the enemy came on. The men of Rohan grew weary. All their arrows were spent, and every shaft was shot. Their swords were notched, and their shields were riven. 3 times Aragorn and Yoma rallied them, and 3 times Anduril flamed in a desperate charge that drove the enemy from the wall. Then a clamor arose in the deep behind. Orcs had crept like rats through the covert through which the stream flowed out. There they had gathered in the shadow of the cliffs until the assault above was hottest, and nearly all the men of the defense had rushed to the wall's top. Then they sprang out. Already some had passed into the jaws of the deep and were among the horses, fighting with the guards. Down from the wall leapt Gimli with a fierce cry that echoed in the cliffs. Khazad! Khazad! He soon had work enough. Aoi! He shouted. The orcs are behind the wall. Aoi! Come, Legolas. There are enough for us both. Khazad e Manu. Gamling the Old looked down from the Hornburg, hearing the great voice of the dwarf above the tumult. The orcs are in the deep. Helm, helm, forth Helmingus, he shouted as he leapt down the stair from the rock with many men of Westfold at his back. Their onset was fierce and sudden, and the orcs gave way before them. Ere long they were hemmed in the narrows of the gorge, and all were slain or driven shrieking into the chasm of the deep to fall before the guardians of the hidden caves. 21, cried Gimli. He hewed a 2-handed stroke and laid the last orc before his feet. Now my count passes Master Legolas again. We must stop this rat hole, said Gamling. Dwarves are said to be cunning folk with stone. Lend us your aid, master. We do not shape stone with battle axes, nor with our fingernails, said Gimli, but I will help as I may. They gathered such small boulders and broken stones as they could find to hand, and under Gimli's direction the Westfold men blocked up the inner end of the covert until only a narrow outlet remained. Then the deeping stream, swollen by the rain, churned and fretted in its choked path, and spread slowly in cold pools from cliff to cliff. It will be drier above, said Gimli. Come, Gamling, let us see how things go on the wall. He climbed up and found Legolas beside Aragorn and Yomer. The elf was whetting his long knife. There was for a while a lull in the assault, since the attempt to break in through the covert had been foiled. 21, said Gimli. Good, said Legolas, but my count is now 24. It has been knife work up here. Yomer and Aragorn leant wearily on their swords. Away on the left, the crash and clamor of the battle on the rock rose loud again. But the Hornburg still held fast, like an island in the sea. Its gates lay in ruin, but over the barricaded beams and stones within no enemy as yet had passed. Aragorn looked at the pale stars, and at the moon now sloping behind the western hills that enclosed the valley. This is a night as long as years, he said. How long will the day tarry? Dawn is not far off, said Gamling, who had now climbed up beside him. But dawn will not help us, I fear. Yet dawn is ever the hope of men, said Aragorn. But these creatures of Isengard, these half-orcs and goblin men that the foul craft of Saruman has bred, they will not quail at the sun, said Gamling, and neither will the wild men of the hills. Do you not hear their voices? I hear them, said Yomer, but they are only the scream of birds and the bellowing of beasts to my ears. Yet there are many that cry in the Dunlin tongue, said Gamling. I know that tongue. It is an ancient speech of men, and once was spoken in many western valleys of the Mark. Hark, they hate us, and they are glad, for our doom seems certain to them. The king, they cry. We will take their king. Death to the Forgoyle, death to the Strawheads, death to the robbers of the north. Such names they have for us. Not in 500 years have they forgotten their grievance that the lords of Gondor gave the mark to Yorl the Young and made alliance with him. That old hated Saruman has inflamed. They are fierce folk when roused. They will not give way now for dusk or dawn until Theoden is taken or they themselves are slain. Nonetheless, they will bring hope to me, said Aragorn. Is it not said that no foe has ever taken the Hornburg if men defended it? So the minstrels say, said Yomer. Then let us defend it and hope, said Aragorn. Even as they spoke, there came a blare of trumpets. Then there was a crash and a flash of flame and smoke. The waters of the deeping stream poured out hissing and foaming. They were choked no longer. A gaping hole was blasted in the wall. A host of dark shapes poured in. Devilry of Saruman, cried Aragorn. They have crept in the covert again while we talked. They have lit the fire of Orthanc beneath our feet. Elendil, Elendil, he shouted as he leapt down into the breach. But even as he did so, 100 ladders were raised against the battlements. Over the wall and under the wall the last assault came sweeping like a dark wave upon a hill of sand. The defense was swept away. Some of the riders were driven back, further and further into the deep, falling and fighting as they gave way, step by step, towards the caves. Others cut their way back towards the citadel. A broad stairway climbed from the deep up to the rock and the rear gate of the Hornburg. Near the bottom stood Aragorn. In his hand still Anduril gleamed, and the terror of the sword for a while held back the enemy, as one by one all who could gain their stair passed up towards the gate. Behind, on the upper steps, knelt Legolas. His bow was bent, but one gleamed arrow was all that he had, and he peered out now, ready to shoot the first orc that should dare to approach the stair. All who can have now got safe within, Aragorn, he called. Come back. Aragorn turned and sped up the stair, but as he ran he stumbled in his weariness. At once his enemies leapt forward. Up came the orcs, yelling with their long arms stretched out to seize him. The foremost fell with Legolas' last arrow in his throat, but the rest sprang over him. Then a great boulder, cast from the outer wall above, crashed down upon the stair, and hurled them back into the deep. Aragorn gained the door, and swiftly it clanged to behind him. Things go ill, my friends, he said, wiping the sweat from his brow with his arm. Ill enough, said Legolas, but not yet hopeless, while we have you with us. Where is Gimli? I do not know, said Aragorn. I last saw him fighting on the ground behind the wall, but the enemy swept us apart. Alas, that is evil news, said Legolas. He is stout and strong, said Aragorn. Let us hope that he will escape back to the caves. There he would be safe for a while, safer than we. Such a refuge will be to the liking of a dwarf. That must be my hope, said Legolas, but I wish that he had come this way. I desired to tell Master Gimli that my tale is now 39. If he wins back to the caves, he will pass your count again, laughed Aragorn. Never did I see an axe so wielded. I must go and seek some arrows, said Legolas. Would that this night would end, and I could have better light for shooting. Alright, Carrie, thank you for stopping by, and I will talk to you later. Aragorn now passed into the citadel. There, to his dismay, he learned that Yomer had not reached the Hornburg. Nay, he did not come to the rock, said one of the Westfold men. I last saw him gathering men about him and fighting in the mouth of the deep. Gamling was with him, and the dwarf, but I could not come to them. Aragorn strode on through the inner court and mounted to a high chamber in the tower. There stood the king, dark against a narrow window, looking out upon the vale. "What is the news, Aragorn?" he said. "The Deeping Wall is taken, lord, and all the defense swept away, but many have escaped hither to the rock." "Is Yomer here?" "No, lord, but many of your men retreated into the deep, and some say that Yomer was amongst them. In the narrows they may hold back the enemy and come within the caves. What hope they may have then, I do not know. More than we. Good provision, it is said, and the air is wholesome there because of the outlets through fissures in the rock far above. None can force an entrance against determined men. They may hold out long. But the orcs have brought a devilry from Orthanc," said Aragorn. "They have a blasting fire, and with it they took the wall. If they cannot come in the caves, they may seal up those that are inside. But now we must turn in our thought to our own defense." "I fret in this prison," said Theoden. "If I could have set a spear in rest, riding before my men upon the field, maybe I could have felt again the joy of battle, and so ended. But I serve little purpose here." "Here at least you are guarded in the strongest fastness of the mark," said Aragorn. "More hope we have to defend you in the Hornburg than in Edoras, or even at Dunharrow in the mountains." "It is said that the Hornburg has never fallen to assault," said Theoden, "but now my heart is doubtful. The world changes, and all at once what was strong now proves unsure. How shall any tower withstand such numbers and such reckless hate? Had I known that the strength of Isengard was grown so great, maybe I should not so rashly have ridden forth to meet it. For all the arts of Gandalf, his counsel seems now not so good as it did before the morning sun." Hi, Albo. Yeah, I don't normally stream at this time, but I think I am going to start streaming during what's daytime for me. We'll split it up a bit, and I wanted to finish this chapter I ended in the middle of, because it bugs me. "Do not judge the counsel of Gandalf until all is over, Lord," said Aragorn. "The end will not be long," said the king, "but I will not end here, taken like an old badger in a trap. Snowmane and Hasofel and the horses of my guard are in the inner court. When dawn comes, I will bid men sound Helm's horn, and I will ride forth. Will you ride with me then, son of Arathorn? Maybe we will cleave a road, or make such an end as will be worth a song, if any be left to sing after us hereafter." "I will ride with you," said Aragorn. Taking his leave, he returned to the walls and passed round all the circuit, enheartening the men and lending aid wherever the assault was hot. Legolas went with him. Blasts of fire leapt up from below, shaking the stones. Grappling hooks were hurled and ladders raised. Again and again the orcs gained the summit of the outer wall, and again the defenders cast them down. At last Aragorn stood above the great gates, heedless of the darts of the enemy. As he looked forth, he saw the eastern sky grow pale. Then he raised his empty hand, palm outward in token of parley. The orcs yelled and jeered. Come down, they cried. "If you wish to speak to us, come down. Bring out your king. We are the fighting Uruk-hai. We will fetch him from his hole if he does not come. Bring out your skulking king." "The king stays or comes at his own will," said Aragorn. "Then what are you doing here?" they answered. "Why do you look out? Do you wish to see the greatness of our army? We are the fighting Uruk-hai." "I looked out to see the dawn," said Aragorn. "You're writing your dissertation?" I don't know how sexy or soothing my voice is right now, but I hope that it helps you. What of the dawn? They jeered. We are the Uruk-hai. We do not stop the fight for night or day, or fair weather, or for storm. We come to kill, by sun or moon. What of the dawn? None knows what the new day shall bring him, said Aragorn. Get your gon, ere it turn to your evil. Get down, or we will shoot you from the wall, they cried. This is no parley. You have nothing to say. I have still this to say, answered Aragorn. No enemy has yet taken the Hornburg. Depart, or not one of you will be spared. No one will be left alive to take back tidings to the north. You do not know your peril. So great a power and royalty was revealed in Aragorn as he stood there alone above the ruined gates before the host of his enemies, that many of the wild men paused and looked back over their shoulders to the valley, and some looked up doubtfully at the sky. But the orcs laughed with loud voices, and a hail of darts and arrows whistled over the wall as Aragorn leapt down. There was a roar and a blast of fire. The archway of the gate above, which he had stood a moment before, crumbled and crashed in smoke and dust. The barricade was shattered, as if by thunderbolt. Aragorn ran to the king's tower. But even as the gate fell and the orcs about it yelled, preparing to charge, a murmur arose behind them, like a wind in the distance, and it grew to a clamor of many voices crying strange news in the dawn. The orcs upon the rock, hearing the rumor of dismay, wavered and looked back. And then, sudden and terrible, from the tower above, the sound of the great horn of Helm rang out. All that heard that sound trembled. Many of the orcs cast themselves on their faces and covered their ears with their claws. Back from the deep the echoes came, blast upon blast, as if on every cliff and hill a mighty herald stood. But on the walls men looked up, listening with wonder, for the echoes did not die. Ever the horn blasts wound up among the hills, nearer now and louder they answered one to another, blowing fierce and free. Helm, Helm, the riders shouted. Helm is arisen and come back to war. Helm for Theoden king. And with that shout the king came. His horse was white as snow, golden was his shield, and his spear was long. At his right hand was Aragorn, Elendil's heir. Behind him rode the lords of the house of Yorl the Young. Light sprang in the sky, and night departed. Forth Yorlingus! With a cry and a great noise they charged. Down from the gates they roared, over the causeway they swept, and they drove through the host of Isengard as a wind among grass. Behind them from the deep the host of Isengard as a... Okay. It's too early for me to read. Behind them from the deep came the stern cries of men issuing from the caves, driving forth the enemy. Out poured all the men that were left upon the rock, and ever the sound of blowing horns echoed in the hills. On they rode, the king and his companions. Captains and champions fell or fled before them. Neither orc nor man withstood them. Their backs were to the swords and spears of the riders, and their faces to the valley. They cried and wailed, for fear and great wonder had come upon them with the rising of the day. So King Theoden rode from Helm's Gate and clove his path to the great dike. There the company halted. Light grew bright about them. Shafts of the sun flared above the eastern hills and glimmered on their spears. But they sat silent on their horses, and they gazed down upon the deeping Coombe. The land had changed. Where before the green dale had lain, its grassy slopes lapped the ever-mounting hills, there now a forest loomed. Great trees, bare and silent, stood rank on rank, with tangled bough and hoary head. Their twisted roots were buried in the long green grass. Darkness was under them. Between the dike and the eaves of that nameless wood only 2 open furlongs lay. They now cowered the proud hosts of Saruman, in terror of the king and in terror of the trees. They streamed down from Helm's Gate until all above the dike was empty of them, but below it they were packed like swarming flies. Vainly they crawled and clambered about the hills of the Coombe, seeking to escape. Upon the east, too sheer and stony was the valley's side. Upon the left, from the west, their final doom approached. There suddenly upon a ridge appeared a rider, clad in white, shining in the rising sun. Over the low hills the horns were sounding. Behind him, hastening down the long slopes, were 1,000 men on foot. Their swords were in their hands. Amid them strode a man tall and strong. His shield was red. As he came to the valley's brink, he set to his lips a great black horn and blew a ringing blast. "Erkenbrand," the riders shouted. "Erkenbrand." "Behold the white rider," cried Aragorn. "Gandalf is come again." "Mithrandir, Mithrandir," said Legolas. "This is wizardry indeed. Come, I would look on this forest ere the spell changes." The hosts of Isengard roared, swayed this way and that, turning from fear to flee. Again the horn sounded from the tower. Down through the breach of the dike charged the king's company. Down from the hills leapt Erkenbrand, lord of Westfold. Down leapt Shadowfax, like a deer that runs sure-footed in the mountains. The white rider was upon them, and the terror of his coming filled the enemy with madness. The wild men fell on their faces before him. The orcs reeled and screamed and cast aside both sword and spear. Like a black smoke driven by a mounting wind, they fled. Wailing, they passed under the waiting shadow of the trees, and from that shadow none ever came again. And that finally finishes that chapter that I ended in the middle of. Yay. So like I said, this was super short strum, just to get rid of that chapter, because I hate leaving in the middle of a chapter. Because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my place and not remember, and then have to start the entire chapter over again. Which I do not wish to do. So, I will be ending this stream. If I could, I would leave it super short. Yep, it was a super short. I would leave it up as just ambience, but I don't know how Twitch feels about that. So, lithosphere flexure calculations, fun stuff. Fun stuff. I'm pretty sure I have forgotten so much of what I learned. I am a dum-dum now. But if one day I'm able to get a new computer that can handle it, I am hoping to do some streams teaching how to use the open source alternatives to ArcGIS. I think that would be fun, assuming I can remember how to use that. Well, don't run out of time. You get writing. You get to writing, and then once you're done with it, you can just relax. Hopefully. You don't want to run out of time. Yeah, I wanna teach that one. QGIS is probably my favorite alternative. I like it better than ArcGIS, honestly. And there's another new one that I've already forgotten the name of that is definitely more user-friendly. It's limited, right now, but it's definitely user friendly. And then there's one that's just a nightmare. But yeah, in theory, if I can get a new computer that can handle it, because I can't even run QGIS on this computer, which sucks. But I would love to do some teaching on using QGIS, because it is, I mean, it's not just for geologists. There's so many fields that use it. And my understanding from others I've talked to is QGIS files can be traded. So if it's somebody that uses ArcGIS, you can do files in QGIS and export them and import them into ArcGIS with no problems. So that is one of the goals. I want to teach QGIS on stream. So we will hope for that. Alright, I'm gonna end the stream. You finish writing your dissertation. I am proud of you and I believe in you and you got this. And I will see you later. Bye-bye. ArcGIS is not at all stable. Yeah, it is very crash prone. Yeah, ArcGIS is... I really hope QGIS replaces it, because yeah, ArcGIS has a lot of issues. Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna get the new job. I don't even know if I want the new job. But we will see. Alright. End in the stream now. And I will talk to you later.
Initiating goodnight sequence. Dispersing appropriate dosage of compound 347. Initiating phase 1 of memory calibration. This won't hurt a bit.